I saw them and I was like, oh, I failed. I didn't sell 100,000 copies.
Congratulations. I mean, that seems like a huge success to me, or at least a moderate success, maybe.
I've listened to lots of podcasts and lots of industry veterans talk about how they'll sell 15,000 copies and that's like a failure.
Success is also, really relative to the input, I think.
What is like one piece of game advice that you don't agree with? And I don't really agree with the advice that you should finish a game or that you need to finish a game.
Welcome to the Dev Dream Podcast, featuring conversations to keep both you and me inspired on our journey of making games. Today, I sat down with Payne Robinson, the solo developer of the incremental game Execute. Now, this game might not have popped off in a way that has caught the cultural mainstream, but it was a very successful launch. Now, one of the most interesting topics we talked about was the expectations that come with being a part of this solo developer community. He sold over 20,000 copies, and for a first title, that's incredibly successful. So why didn't it feel that way? We talked about that, his game dev philosophies, how he created what he believes might be becoming a bit of a cult classic in the incremental space, and lots more. He's one of the most charismatic people that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. If you do enjoy it, you can let me know by hitting that subscribe button and looking out for future episodes. Let's get right into it. I'm so excited to share.
In order to catch the audience up a little bit, take two here. You recently released an awesome YouTube video titled "My Game Didn't Go Viral, but I Still Paid Off My Student Loans." So the game in question is Execute. Can you just tell me a little bit about the game and whether or not you consider it a success?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me on and giving me the chance to come out here and just talk about stuff. I'm an educator, first of all, so it's just nice to get to teach people how to do stuff. I don't know if it's just because I have little siblings and I've always just been like, yeah, here's how you do it better so you don't have a hard time. So it's nice to get to come out and just teach and talk about what happened and maybe help people do it better, because it's a hard road publishing a game or launching a game. So yes, I think I would consider it a success. I don't really know what I was thinking it was going to be. I was actually working on another game 6 months ago at this point. Maybe it was a little more than that. And I was talking to my friend that I work pretty closely with, another teacher who helps me with some development. And I was like, dude, can I put Grid Tweaker aside and just work on this small project? Because Grid Tweaker is killing me right now. I really don't want to work on this. I was going through some like personal stuff at the time that was just making me feel really down. School was tough. Summer was coming up. I was like, I just want to do this side project. I think I'm going to work on it for like 2 months. I'll just post it on itch just for fun, just get it out there. And then I'll be done. I'll come back to Execute, or I'll come back to Grid Tweaker. And that project ended up being Execute. So the inception of it was for it to just be a side project that wasn't anything. And then once I polished it up and got it on itch, I was like, I think I might just take this to Steam just to practice launching it. So for Grid Tweaker, because Grid Tweaker is going to be bigger. And for context, Grid Tweaker is kind of like Inscription meets Balatro, I guess. I don't know if I'll ever finish it, but that's kind of where the influences are. So you're in like a weird dark room doing stuff like that. So I put that aside. It was a bigger 3D game, and then I don't know. It just kind of hit. I put it on itch. People were playing it. People were liking it. People thought the idea was cool. I made a couple of YouTube videos about it. People thought it was cool. And then I just did all the stuff. The last month was definitely the craziest because I met a ton of developers. I got put in that Incremental Discord because I reached out to Thornity after seeing them on the Jonas Tyroller podcast, and I was like, oh, he meets with people. Okay, so I was talking to tons of people that knew what they were doing, like, where do I post? How much do I post? Like, figuring out all the information that you need to figure out in order to launch a successful game is so... It's not gatekept because it's easy to find, but it's like you have to do a ton of work and you have to be very aware of the game culture and all the dev sphere. So I just lucked out, ran into the right people, talked to the right people, got the right things sent out, and then launched my game. And I have no context for a Steam launch. So for me, I was sad because all the other devs that I'm working with, you just did a podcast with Thornity, and he's talking about how much money they made and how many copies they sold. I saw them and I was like, I failed. I didn't sell 100,000 copies. Dang it. Next time I'll do better. And everyone around me is like, oh my God, you sold. I think I'm almost at 20,000 at this point. So,
20,000 copies?
Yes, 20,000 copies.
Wow. Congratulations.
So,
I mean, that seems like a huge success to me, or at least a moderate success, maybe might be a better way to say it, but
yes,
very good.
It is. I think it is. It is. It feels good to me. It's life-changing for me, but I guess it's not life-changing. It's more like year-changing. Like this year is definitely going to be a better year, but like the rest of my life, like if I just quit here, it's not going to change that much. So I don't know. It is successful. I'm happy about it. I'm not sad at all. It's a huge win. I just I've listened to lots of podcasts and lots of industry veterans talk about how they'll sell 15,000 copies and that's like a failure for an indie game. And I remember hearing that and just having that drummed into my head where it's like, unless you hit 100,000 or at least 50,000, like it hasn't fully succeeded. But that video that you're talking about, my game didn't go viral, but paid off my student loans. I think kind of the thesis of that video is like, hey, you don't have to sell 50,000 copies. You don't have to sell 100,000 copies. You can sell 10, 20,000 copies and that's a success. So, just from the standpoint of like, if you're going to have a hobby game, it's going to be your side gig. You just recently had a podcast about with Mrs.
I never know how many is's.
Right. Talking about passive income. I don't want to be like, bro, like bisdev. Let's just try to make money, passive income. But like, yeah, posting a small game that's well made this is passive income. I was crunching the numbers with a buddy before this, and it was like, dude, this thing's gonna pay out at least $1,000 for probably the next month or probably the next 2 years, like every month. And we don't have to do anything. So that's cool. So yeah, I know I was all over the map there, but there's
that was a great answer. Yeah. And, you mentioned about success and failure, and success is also, really relative to the input, I think. You are still a full-time educator and worked on this in your spare time. And so when I view it through that lens, it feels like a massive success. But if someone had spent 2 years as their full-time gig, obviously, then that would be a failure. So we definitely have to have the context when we're looking at it. How long did you actually end up spending on Execute?
I haven't done the exact calculations, but ballpark, it was 5 months of real time, like 5 months passed from when I decided to start working on it to launch. But actual dev time, I think, was about 2 months of like full time. Like if you did like, 8 40-hour work weeks, that was about probably the amount of time I spent on it. It could have been a little bit more than that because it's only like 300 something hours or something like that. So that seems like not a lot of time, and that would be crazy if that is the amount of time it took me. But it's not that complicated of a game. I think the premise is just very strong. So that's why I cut through.
Yeah, I definitely have a couple questions about just incremental games and things coming up. But before we get there, I just want to pick your brain on why you think the game resonates so well with people. So still currently, it is very positive on Steam. And I think the last time I checked a couple of days ago, it's at the 95% mark, which if you can get enough reviews, will get you that overwhelmingly positive. So it's clearly doing a lot right. Why do you think that is? Or maybe from feedback you've gotten, or just even just your own instincts, why do you think the game does so well?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, and it's hard not to be like arrogant, I guess. Just be like, I just am the best. I figured out how to do it. Like. But,
well, I give you full permission. People listening are looking for a way through the wilderness, so it will be received by me at least as not at all hubris. You come across already very, very humble. So really, I give you permission to say what you think went well and be honest about it. That's okay.
I've been thinking a lot about before I jump into it. Do you mind if I ask your background? Like, why are you interested in game dev? Are you developing games, or what's your history with games? Just just quick so I have some context. I don't tell you stuff you
Yeah, of
already know.
course. Yeah, I am a person that when COVID happened, so I have zero background in games. I don't have a technical background. I didn't study games in college or anything like
Even
that.
just playing
Uh,
games, like
yeah, I'll have a lot of great memories with video games. One of a thing my family would do, like over Christmas break, whenever we were off of school, is we would hook up whatever video game system we had in the living room, and we would all play games together. So I have super fond memories of video games. It's just like a core element of my childhood, and even today, I still game with my brothers, and so gaming is very important to me. But never thought about making games until COVID hit, and I somehow got down a YouTube like game dev rabbit hole and just kind of fell in love with the idea of it. And long story short, I tried, I gave up, I tried again, I gave up, and then more recently I tried one more time, and I did actually release a really, really tiny game that's like more of just like a little like click a few buttons, but I got the experience of like what it looks like to put a game on Steam, and have kind of come to a place with that of like, I think I could actually make a game if I spent the time on it. But then I started the podcast because I'm just in a super busy season of life. I'm doing my master's, working full time. And so I don't feel like I have quite enough time to invest what I want to into making games myself. And so instead I started the podcast to just like stay in the game dev community. And that's been a real pleasure. So that's pretty much caught up on where, my interaction with game dev is. I'm not currently making anything.
that's awesome. Do you mind if I ask what the game's called, just so I can look it up later and
Yeah, it's
experiment with it?
called Wild Harmony.
Okay,
It's rough.
that's
It's a
okay.
just want to be honest about what you're getting. It's calling it a
It's
game is a
fine.
stretch for
It's
anyone out there.
fine.
But yeah,
Everybody who's made a game has made something rough before. Like
right.
my first game wasn't Execute. Like
Yep,
it's
true.
and Execute's still just buttons. Like
Right.
it's
Yep,
hard to make video games. So nope, no
right.
worries. No, that's so
Yeah,
cool that you launched something. I mean, trying and failing and trying and failing and then getting something out there. That's way further than most people get out here. So hats off to you.
yeah.
Best of luck
Thank
in
you.
the future.
Yeah, thank you very
Totally. And
much.
super smart choice. I know podcast wise, I had said before the show, I've done a couple, and the reason was because what you had just mentioned, like keeping yourself engaged in the culture, in what's going on, what's trending, what are people doing. It's exhausting to try and do that just from consuming. So to find a way to do it where you can have conversations like this instead of just watching stuff on YouTube, which is still great. Don't get me wrong. I love
Mhm.
YouTube, but it's like this makes it a little bit more, it feels more human, like there's more life to it when you get to talk to other devs and then you get to ask your question right off the bat. So you're like, all right, I'm taking notes about this for the future. You'll probably,
Exactly.
after this is all said and done, drop like the next big thing because you've got everybody's information inside your head, right?
Well, I have to
So
try an incremental game now because a game about feeding a black hole popped off. Execute is a great example. Like I've been lucky to get connected with the incremental community. So who knows? Maybe we'll start there.
yes, yeah. Well, if you can remind me real quick what the question was before I
Yeah.
rudely
I was just
turned it
asking
back on you.
why you think the game resonated so well and has a 95% positivity rating on Steam.
Well, I'm trying not to repeat things that I've said publicly before, so it gives you some new information. But it does come back to playing games. That's a huge thing that I try to push on my channel. That's a huge thing that I try to tell devs is it's just like you gotta play games. So like I really got into playing incremental games. I don't know when I really was like super into them. I don't remember. Maybe I think I was bored at work one day. Maybe it was during COVID and we were teaching hybrid and there was nothing going on and I had to be on my computer, but I couldn't play my console or I'd feel too guilty, because I was technically like on call. So I was like, well, I'll click around in my browser and explore. And I knew my friend had shown me Cookie Clicker or some idle game on my phone. And so I knew of the idle game genre and I was like, let's see if I can find some more idle games. And I stumbled into um, the incremental games subreddit. And this is before I've made any games. Um, and they just had these humongous, crazy lists of like the top 100 games And I was like, oh my God, top 100 idle games. Wow, there's 100 of these games. And then I saw it was the top 100 games of 2021. And I was like, oh my God, there's 100 good games for just this year. And then I started
Wow.
digging deeper, and there was just like thousands and thousands of these games that people have been making. And there's web developers that are coding these things in JavaScript and using like React to make graphics and stuff because they don't know how to learn a game engine, but they want to make a game. And so these lend themselves to coding stuff in JavaScript really well. There's people who are literally making games in PowerPoint and posting them, and people talking highly about, oh my God, this PowerPoint incremental is really good. And it just seemed like this really accessible, interesting genre. And I stumbled into Universal Paperclips. Are you familiar with that game?
Mm-mm.
So Universal Paperclips looks like a spreadsheet. It's written probably in JavaScript or Python, and the font is Times New Roman, and it's just like crappy little generic buttons. And I
Very
loved
cool.
this. I was like, oh my God, I love games that are just they cut everything back. They strip it all completely because the secret, in my opinion, to making a game, and this is answering your question a little bit, making a game that resonates with so many people is to cut the BS. Like don't add extra things onto the game that don't serve the core of the game. And games that have a really strong core idea, and then everything in the game adds to that core idea, those are perfect games. And so Universal Paperclips is a perfect incremental game because the game is about making paperclips, and every single button in the game makes you make more paperclips. And there is nothing else in the game that doesn't add to that ethos. And so this game, it kept me entertained for hours, and it was literally just text and numbers. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, that was one of the best games I've ever played, full stop. And I've played a ton of video games. It kept me so engaged when it was just text and buttons. I was like, I've got to play more of these. So I played a ton. I just studied them. I tried to figure out why are some of the best games the best? Why are the worst games the worst? Which one of these, there's different subgenres of incremental games. They're organized very poorly because people will be like, well, this is an idle game, and this is an incremental game, and this is an active idle game, and this is an idle incremental game, and this is a idle RPG incremental game. And I had an argument one time where I was like, isn't an active incremental RPG just a JRPG? And everyone was like, yeah, I guess you're right. That is just a JRPG. So it's like so it's very weird genre. It's all these people like trying to reinvent the wheel, and just make something engaging. And I think the core ethos for incremental games is just to start with mechanics first and to have some sort of meta progression and to build an entire game loop around one very simple mechanic, usually a mechanic that allows you to gain more of some sort of resource, and then build, something exponentially crazy out of that resource. So I think that Execute did very well because I looked at all this, I played a lot of these games, and I started to notice patterns. Again, my background is in literature, so I was just trained to recognize patterns in books because all of the literature is connected. And then once you've read the, best 30 books that are the basis of modern Western literature, you kind of start to connect all of these things together and realize that things are, I don't know, there's meta patterns to everything. So the patterns to incremental games are numbers always go up. There were not a lot of games where the numbers went down. Execute is based on, deleting everyone on the planet. And so I saw that. I was like, I don't like that incremental games last forever. I like when my games end. So I'm going to start doing that. And I have a lot of people that were excited about, hey, this is great. There's actually an end to this. I would like to play this for 4 or 5 hours and then be done. And I think that's also just a movement on Steam right now. People are just playing shorter games. So that just happened to fit into that. And then I think the premise just lends itself well to, I'm a big fan of Jonas Tyroller and his ethos on how to make a good game, which is to sell a fantasy. And Execute, I think, is a pretty good fantasy. It's a messed up fantasy, but like it's a fantasy that every kid who's built a block tower has had, right? Like you build a tower of blocks, or you build a crazy Lego set, and like part of you just wants to crush it and destroy it for some reason. And I think a lot of humans have that drive inside of them. And Execute is just like, hey, like what if you could destroy the earth and like there were no consequences just to see what happened, you know? And it's simple. It's a simplified version of that where the whole game is just focused on you simplifying that and doing it in a way that's really gory and messed up, but also rides that line where it's still kind of cartoony, where you can kind of suspend the atrocities that you're doing. And there's this nostalgic aspect to it. There's so many, I think, so many things that go into making a good game that you can't really like put into words, because I think the aesthetic was a part of it too. The art was a part of it too. But like those are things that you just get with taste. And I think that's where you play a lot of games and you start to realize like, oh, I think this looks cool. And the reason why I think it looks cool is because I have thousands of hours of games that I've played and my taste is influenced by all of these great designers that I've consumed their work. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, play a lot of video games and then study the games that you play and try to figure out why they are fun. And then, you know, do the same thing when you're making your game.
Yeah, a really interesting thing you also just mentioned there, which I thought seemed really intuitively smart, was like cutting back all the BS. Whenever you were developing Execute, did you have any features or things that you ended up cutting out because you didn't feel like it was core gameplay?
I cut out so much from that game. And there's a question I think that you had sent me before this. I don't know if you want people to know that you have questions that you're going to ask.
That's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question that you said, what is like one piece of game advice that you don't agree with? And I don't really agree with the advice that you should finish a game or that you need to finish a game. And I think that's a huge one where people are going to be like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Yes, you need to go through the whole process or you'll get stuck in hell and you'll never make something. I don't agree. I think I have, and this will answer your question. There are so many projects that I started and finished, and I think I cheated a little bit because I was in music for a while. So I was doing music production for like 10 years before I got into video games. And sound design and electronic music. And I was like, I'm going to make it big in the music industry. It's super hard. There's no money in the music industry. And I wasn't passionate enough to like do that. I liked video games way more. But I learned how to like identify when a song was worth continuing to finish and to mix and master and release. And when like, you know, you have a cool idea, but you're never really going to be able to make it into a cool song. And it's easier to do that with music because you can make a song in like a day or two. And so like I just made thousands of songs and was able to eventually realize and kind of refine my perspective on like throwing bad ideas out and being okay not finishing stuff, and being able to identify the good ideas. And with games it's the same thing. So Execute, I actually made Execute twice before I made it this third time.
And interesting.
With Grid Tweaker, I've made Grid Tweaker 6 times. And the most recent iteration is the 7th time, and that's that one I just quit, and I'm probably going to go back and remake it again. And so I think it's okay. Like I think a lot of people who are starting out are like, I'm not finishing anything. What's wrong with me? And a lot of people are like, you got to finish your game. Go finish it. Come on. But like, it's hard with music. It's easier, like I said, because you can throw stuff out and then the next day have one that you finish, you know, and so you get that gratification of like, okay, I'm not broken. I just didn't have good ideas. But with games, you know, it takes so long. You might have a spell where you're developing for 3 years and you don't finish anything. And if you've never published a game, you know, you might feel like a failure. But, you know, for me, I worked for probably 3 or 4 years building these games. I built Execute not in Pico 8. I built Grid Tweaker in Pico 8. But I built Execute originally in Godot as one of the first projects I made. And I was like, this is cool, but I can't finish it. I don't have the skills to finish it. And then I built it again because I was like, all right, I'm going to remake it. And this answers your question. What stuff did I cut out? So I remade it as like, I was like, all right, you're going to destroy the world. You're going to have a big world map. You're going to build all of these like armies. So you're going to build a robot army and you're going to be able to launch the robots down to Earth. And this prototype, you can do it. Like you can launch the robots down to Earth. You can build like a parasite that you launch down to Earth. There's like, the lightning mini game was originally in there. So you were like collecting lightning and building up this lightning to charge up your robots. And then you had this huge like skill tree where like every skill in the skill tree is like this self-automated machine that needed resources to run. So if you wanted perks, you could like modularly like switch resources out to like activate different perks, and you have to build those resources. And I was looking at all these crazy like mega idle games like Melvor Idle and oh man, I can't remember the name of it at the time, but there's these big mega idle games like Idle Research that are just like they last forever and they go on forever, and you have all these systems that are interconnected. And so I was looking at Execute as this small idea where like guillotine, kill the world, and I was like, it's too small. I got to add all this stuff. And after a while, I was like, hey, this is way too much for me to organize. I am not good enough at organizing things to actually make this work. Let's cut it back. So I put it on the shelf and then went back to Grid Tweaker. And then I came back to Execute, and I was like, all right, this second version is too bloated. The first version was perfect, but the second version has some cool ideas. So let's cut back the second version, take some stuff from the first version, and make it work. And so I cut out a lot of the world map stuff. There were supposed to be lots of different machines that you'd have in Execute, but I realized that was like, I was like, why? Yes, that would be cool, but like, how much is that really adding to the player experience? I think it's like players in these games just want to have a really satisfying progression curve. And if I added these other machines, it would like mess with that progression curve. And part of that is just me not having enough time to add those. So that was also like, how much time do I have in order to make this feel satisfying? I know I can only make one progression curve feel satisfying. So yeah, I don't know. I cut out a lot that was going to add more options to the game. And I think it was for the better. I think that's part of why people enjoy it, because it just feels so focused. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It seems like in an incremental game in particular, a focused experience could be something people are after, something that they can complete in an afternoon or a weekend. And back to your point about people saying you have to finish games, it's interesting if you stop and think about it for a minute, that all of those people probably also would say that they have like hundreds of unfinished projects, because there is also something to just starting and building stuff. And so maybe that's what you're getting at a little bit as well. Now, I do want to jump in a little bit and just ask you, we've talked about how this is an incremental game and even mentioned some of the incremental community. I'm curious, after your experience building one, do you think that making an incremental game is sort of like developing on easy mode?
Yeah. This is a great question, and it really it kind of hits at the core. I was talking to a friend recently. I don't know, maybe you feel like this too. Do you feel like we're in a gold rush right now, especially with incremental games and just Steam games in general? Like, does it feel like a lot of people who wouldn't normally want to develop games are like trying to make a game for some reason? Is that what you've seen or how you feel?
I was just listening to a YouTuber called Thomas Stewart was interviewing Chris Zukowski, the marketing expert that has kind of become synonymous with Steam marketing. And Chris was essentially saying he feels like this is the golden age of indie game development. Like, it's the easiest time to make a game and make money. So then it's with that, I mean, that he would probably know. He feels like he has big data and works with a lot of people. For me, I'm in this weird place right now where I've just been lucky enough to talk to a small amount of very successful people. And so my lens is probably a little bit skewed, because I'm sure there's tons of people that have made incremental games that they felt flopped, that didn't work. You mentioned there's hundreds per year. So I guess I would say, yeah, it might be the easiest time, which might bring in the most people, which eventually will make it not the gold rush. So it might be that might be a good analogy for where we're at now. What do you think? Do you think we are?
I feel like that is. I feel like the gold rush it misses the mark a little bit, because the gold rush, there's only a finite amount of gold, and I think with games, I don't think we're ever going to not want to play video games, as long as we have computers and like power and electricity. Like, as long as the world isn't over, I think we're always going to want to play video games, right?
Right.
fingers crossed the world keeps going. But um and looking at the last couple of years of Steam data, like I think I made a video that I posted yesterday where I was like, I sold in the top 20% of Steam right now. And I think that's a very achievable mark. And there's people who sold in the top 30% of Steam who made money. You know, like if you made an incremental game in 3 months and you posted it, you could definitely sell in the top 30% of Steam. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think what is going to change and what is going to go away, and why I don't think incremental game is necessarily easy mode, is because reviewers are like, people get tired of stuff. It's the same reason that like Assassin's Creed is like super loved, and then like all of the recent installments have sold less and less and less and less and reviewed worse and worse and worse, is because it's like it's still the same formula, even though they're putting extra stuff on top of it. It's the same thing again, you know. And something that I feel equipped to do, because I have so much experience in games, is to grab different formulas and mix them together and build a new formula. And I think if you can do that, then yeah, developing an incremental game on easy mode is easy mode. If you're going to come to it with original take, and you know the core principles of incremental games, and you know what people are expecting, but you're going to give them a twist. Yeah, totally. I think if you're trying to just look for easy money, yeah, I've seen recently a few incremental games sell quite a lot, and they were not very original ideas, but people are really into incremental games right now. So like I think, I don't know if I would put all my money on that though. I don't know if I'd be like, all right, these asteroid destroying incremental games are very popular. Like I'm going to make an asteroid destroying incremental game, and I don't even care if I only make $10,000. Like I'm just going to do it. Like maybe if you're like a student and you're like, this is my first project, I just want to see how it goes. But like, I just personally would rather spend my time making something that I think is fun. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily easy mode right now. Maybe it is, and I'm just like trying to gatekeep it. I'm like, no, don't just copy people and just to make money. I don't want the Steam store to be filled with slop, but I don't know. Maybe it is. I think to an extent it is, if you follow the right formula. But even a lot of my friends, they're not getting great reviews. Like a lot of people in that store, they're selling really well. But they're not getting great reviews. And even what you had said, like people, maybe what they're expecting from an incremental game is something they can beat in a weekend. The reviews that I have that are bad are, I wish this was longer. Why isn't this longer?
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think there's just certain genres that'll do well, and making an incremental game is not very hard because you can do it with buttons. So I think that's why it's easy mode. But you still have to understand the genre to make a good one that people are going to buy. And you still have to make it look appealing. So yes and no.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's somewhere near where my intuition is at as well. Like, I think there are certain genres that, especially, I think the game dev YouTube community is mostly solo hobby developers. And for that crowd, incremental is like a really good choice. But then you still, at the end of the day, have to make a good game, which I don't think is inherently easy. I think what could be interesting to dive into is just a couple, like maybe more granular parts of the incremental games for you. So like one thing that you decided to implement and execute was a prestige system. Why has every incremental game that you've played, because I don't actually really play the genre very much, do most of them implement a prestige system, or how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, so most incremental games have a prestige system. That's a pretty common staple for every incremental game. But they're usually it's when you beat the entire game, you prestige. So it's almost like New Game Plus. So you'll get all the way to the end, and then you'll come back. That's a common way to do it. And the other common way to do it is you can prestige once you feel like you're not making any more progress. And by prestiging, it will like double the speed that you're progressing, so then you can progress further. So the idea is to like get far, kind of hit like a diminishing return, go back, and then get a little further, go back, and then get a little further. And I like that second option. And I also I played a game called Territory Idol, which is a very old idle game, and it was one of the best selling ones on Steam like 10 years ago. So very old, doesn't even work on very many computers anymore. And this is another secret, is to just like steal good ideas from people. They have a really cool prestige system where in Territory Idol, you're buying these squares that do different things. You have a square that will produce wheat, and a square that will make soldiers, and a square that will, I think you can have all your monks like chanting stuff, and it will like increase how much you're producing. And in order to buy a new space so that you can have a new resource square, you have to pay gold. And to get gold, you have to sell your kingdom. So all the territories that you're making make up your kingdom. And when you sell your kingdom, you prestige. So you restart, but now you can buy a new square, and then you can do it all over again. And the amount of gold you get is the amount that your kingdom is worth. And that is exactly how Execute works. Like, I love that idea. I'd never seen that done, where you're like selling the system that you just built.
Mhm.
And so Execute was kind of built on that, where I was like, all right, what are you going to sell? It's like, all right, you sell your execution pit to like the devil or something, or you sell it to like, I don't know who's buying execution pits, maybe like a stockholder or whatever, and they give you gold for it, and then you use that gold to update your next execution pit so it's more efficient. That idea was cool, and I liked that wasn't just like destroy everybody in the world and then prestige and then start over again and do it all over again. Like, I wanted it to be built into the main loop. And I wanted your old pits to like be still a part of the game. So in Execute, when you sell your old execution pit, you can still see and you can name them. So like you can be like, execution pit number 1 is still killing at 1 person per second, and your second pit is 30 people per second. So you can kind of see your progression through time. So I stole that from Territory Idol. Shout out to Territory Idol. I've never seen that idea in any other game. So
yeah, that's a very clever solution to that. I'm wondering if there's any other nuance that you discovered or implemented into making big number go up fun. Because I imagine it's a little bit like, you could make a boss in a game more difficult by just giving it infinite health. And so I imagine you can't just literally make the number go up, because there are some variables in how you need to make it fun. And, talking back to Thornity, who worked on a game about feeding a black hole, he got as specific as like, every X seconds, I want this to happen, and every X minutes, I want this to happen. Did you have anything that specifically outlined, or how did you kind of balance and just find the fun in your game?
I think Thornity and I are on different sides of this, because I've talked with him too, and he played my game and he was like, dude, you got to tune this up. Like, I was playing it for a minute and I got bored after the first minute. And so you gotta speed this up. And I actually had reviews in my game that were like, oh my God, I love how this game doesn't feel like it's trying to like just pull dopamine out of you. Like, it's making you think. And even though it is a linear experience, you still have to decide where your resources are being allocated, and that determines how you progress. And that will slow you down a little bit. So you have to take some time to think. So it's a little bit more of like it isn't strategy because there's only one option, but it's like fake strategy. So like you can play it when you're tired and still feel like you're being strategic, which is part of why I made it. Cause like, I don't want to play Civ after I get off of work because my brain is dead.
Mhm.
I have decision fatigue, but making really small decisions might be fun. But his approach is totally valid, and I would argue probably objectively right if your goal is to make money. If your goal is to make money and get the most amount of appeal, and you just want people to jump into your game and have just be fixated and be sucked into your game, Thornity's approach is correct, because you'll just hack somebody's brain and suck them in. My approach is the approach that I got from Local Thunk, the developer of Balatro, because I was looking into this too. There's so many formulas online for balancing incremental games. There's like Thornity said, there's ways where you can do it where you're every X seconds, you can kind of break it down and data structure it. But Local Funk, I remember being like, how did he balance this? How do they balance these big games? And he did an interview where he's like, I just play tested it. I play tested it hundreds and hundreds of times, and I went through, and when I felt like something was bad, I would go back and I would change it. And so execute, there's probably 10 different versions of the game, all with a different progression structure that would focus on a different machine. Um, and that was just me playing it that's part of why the game is so short, is so I could sit down for 2 hours and beat it in 2 hours. And that's why there's an achievement, beat it in 2 hours and 10 minutes, because that was about the time it would take me to beat it when I would replay it. And I would just go back and tweak values until it felt fun. And I was doing that as I would develop. And for me, that was way more fun because it feels more personal. Like there feels like there's a story to the numbers and there's like certain beats that you hit and it feels more organic and not like it's trying to hack your brain. Like when you do it just with the numbers, it almost feels sterile. And I played a game about Defeat a Black Hole. I think it's awesome. Aramis and Thornity are great. But it has almost like a transactional quality to it where it's very binary, where you get in there and you go and you have a round and it's like every round you get enough money to buy at least 1 or 2 new upgrades every time. And like that's just what happens. And like there's no surprise. Like you're just in there, you kind of move your mouse around and you come back, you get 1 or 2 upgrades. You go in, you move your mouse around, you get 1 or 2 upgrades. And to me that feels so binary and linear, and that type of feeling is used in so many different incremental games. And I think that's why my reviews are better, because people are like, wow, I was engaged by this, but it didn't feel like this linear transaction. It felt like sometimes I couldn't get a reward. And then I'd have to think, why can't I get this reward? Is there a way I can optimize this system? What if I upgraded that system? Okay, yes, upgrading this did give me enough resources. Wow. Or, oh, wait, maybe I could do it this way in my next run. Like, you start having these conversations that make the player feel like they have more agency, which makes the game feel more friendly and more interesting, which I feel like is what elevates it above the pack. That being said, you need players that want to engage that way. Some players just want that binary experience. Just the same reason why people are buying Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty, right? Not that there's anything wrong with those games, but those are developed with formulas to be mass appeal, so that people who don't want to think about what they're consuming can just come in and consume without having to think about it. And I think that's a totally valid way to make money. That's just not the way that I want to do it.
Yeah, something that's come out of this podcast is just that there can be multiple different paths to success. And so it's really fun to compare and contrast different styles. And so, having you and Thornity on pretty close together, people can take both of those approaches and feel out which one feels best. And even with yours, it's really interesting. Like at first glance, it's like, well, the data-driven one's probably the right one. But then you start talking, you're like, there is this intangible thing that you can't account for. That's just, you're sort of like, the phrase that came to my mind was like guess and vibe check. Like that was kind of maybe your approach. And there is a lot of heart to that. And so, yeah, that's really cool that you found a different way that worked for you, that was fun and clearly led to great results. I'm wondering also, just to continue talking about execute, was there anything you found while making the game that was a particular challenge or roadblock?
Yeah, I think the roadblock for most devs is just programming. And like programming is such a broad term for like, I think what I would determine is just like code organization, because everybody can learn how to program. It's not hard to do to write a conditional statement or to write a function or to understand how an engine works. Like that takes a little bit of work, but reading the documentation, watch a couple tutorials, you can get it. So anybody can make a hello world statement or to make a guy run around on the screen. And I think this is the core of why it's hard to make a game. There's lots of other reasons why, but like once you really get into, okay, I know I want there to be a guy on the screen, but like then I want there to be enemies attacking the guy. And then it's like, okay, like do I write a new script for every enemy, or do I write a script that holds all the parts of the enemy, and then do I reuse those parts for other enemies? And then if I'm going to use those parts for other enemies, where do I store the parts? And then once I'm going to save those parts, do I save those parts in an enemy save script, or do I save them in a global save script?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes on and on and on, and it gets so complicated. And because no one has made the game that you've made, no one has figured out or solved the organizational solution that's going to best fit your game. So people are going online like, how do I make XYZ game? And you can find some great solutions for platformers and for roguelike deck builders and for like all of the genres that are solved. But if you follow their solution, like your game is going to feel like their game. And, then you might sell well if you have a good premise or whatever. But like, in my opinion, the best way to sell more is to like put a twist and do something a little different. And if you do something a little different, you're going to have to come up with some original organizational skills to like keep your stuff organized and working properly. And now, this is not to say that you can't use some solutions that you find. Obviously, you can piecemeal something together, but I think that's the hardest part with every project is figuring out how to organize it so that it's modular. With Execute, it's the way that it's coded was not organized very well because I didn't expect it to actually be commercially viable. So I'm like, the people are asking for updates, and I'm like, it's going to be a lot harder than you think it's going to be to go back in there and add that. So I've kind of painted myself into a corner with this. And the next project I'm working on right now with the prototype, I'm spending a ton of time laying the foundation for something that's going to be very modular and very like now after Execute, I'm like, okay, I got to go back and I got to make sure that my global script is not a string-based dictionary, because if it's a string-based dictionary, I'm screwed because that's how Execute works. So coding is the short answer. Did you recognize that in that project that you had made? I mean, how did you deal with that issue? And is that what you recognized as being one of the harder parts?
Yeah, I think so. I also, I mean, I just think game dev is hard. Especially like I was very novice, and so I was in that area. I talked to another developer pretty recently who talked about how like they've hit a point where they feel like where when they're developing, they're just in a flow state because they can solve most problems without looking up a resource. And I was still at the stage where I was the opposite of that. Like everything I wanted to do, I needed to turn to a forum or a YouTube or ask ChatGPT to like give me some guidance. And so, yeah, I think programming in particular is probably the hardest part. Like I think anyone can learn how to get things to like show up in an engine. I think if you pick an engine and you spend very much time at all in it, you'll figure out where things are and how to do that. So unless you add art as like a whole nother discipline, which I do think is also challenging for different reasons, yeah, I would say programming and exactly what you were describing. Like, well, now that I have two things that I want to interact, how do I do that? Like that does get pretty hard. So yeah, I think I would agree with you there.
And not just how do you do it, but like how do you do it in a way that doesn't just work for these two things, but is then going to work for all the other things that are similar to these two things in the future.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's just such a weird abstract concept and way to think that you don't do in any other field. I feel like maybe logistics, you're doing that kind of thinking, but otherwise,
yeah. Yeah, game dev is hard. Are you proud of Execute?
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so proud of it. I'm so excited. I wouldn't shut up about it. My fiance and all my friends, like I remember I was doing the art to begin with and it looked fine, but then once I found this artist who was the guy who did my capsule art, he was the guy who did the Megabonk capsule art. And I just happened to ask him, I was like, hey, could you do some sprite work for me? And he's like, oh yeah, I've been experimenting with that. And he just sends me back like some of the like best sprite animations I've ever seen. I was like, oh my God. Like that was probably the moment I knew that Execute was going to do well when I saw those. Cause I was like, wow, like you just made my project. You just legitimized the whole thing. Like if I just put this on a screen in front of somebody, it looks like a real video game now. So, I'm very proud of like he did the work, but I'm proud of coming up with the idea and like the executing everything together, like it felt like a team effort because he carried a lot of the visual design. So I'm very proud of how it turned out. It's a cool game. And I think based on how it's reviewing, it'll be a bit of a cult classic in the incremental genre, which is a cool feather in my cap.
Yeah, that's a really cool place to be. You've transitioned me perfectly to the next kind of section of questions that I wanted to talk about, which is just sort of like broadly like marketing and strategy. And I was going to ask you how you came up with the Steam capsule, which you've already answered. But I did see something really cool you did was you interviewed Giovanni Vim, who is the artist who, as you mentioned, made the capsule for Megabonk. Is there anything from your conversation with him or even working with him that really stood out and maybe that people watching could take away as they think about Steam capsules?
Yeah, I wish I'd cut up the interview a little bit better because it's a great interview, but the whole like first 5 minutes of it, he's just like, nah, man, like I don't know what I'm doing. Like he was so shy. But he's a good friend of mine at this point. We've worked together quite a bit, and yeah, God, I love him. I think what we ended up like coming to when it comes to capsule art is like there needs to be a hook. That's not the word that he was using. He's such an artist. Like it's so hard to like nail him down to like a concept to be like, all right, what do you call that? Is that called a hook? Like he'd be like, no, it's not quite a hook. Like he's just so out there. But he's got just great ideas and just this incredible intuition for just like making something that looks hooky. Like if you look at the Megabonk capsule art and you look at the Execute capsule art or the Buggos capsule art, like it just catches your eye, and it's not just because of the colors or the composition. It's like everything just blends together perfectly. Um, and it's I would say it has a lot to do with it's the same as like a YouTube thumbnail. Um, it needs to be readable and it needs to hook you. So like Execute is a guy in a guillotine and there's a blood spatter on like a Windows 95 window, right? And you're just like immediately like, what? Like, and it's very bright. So you kind of could just look at that and go like, Execute, like what even is that? Like I need to know what that is, you know? So you want the in my opinion, you want the viewer or the player to ask a question when they see it. It's the same as when you would go into it's the reason why I picked up the Kingdom Hearts box art when I was like 7. I don't know if you've ever seen the Kingdom Hearts box art, but the original Kingdom Hearts game, it's like Disney characters sitting next to teenagers and they're all on the edge of a cliff and there's a huge moon and they have giant keys in their hands. And I remember being 7, being like, what is this? Like right next to it is, you know, like the army, like Green Army Men game. And it's like, okay, I get what that is. It's Green Army Men. That's stupid. I want like weird key people and Disney characters. What is that? So like making some sort of spectacle, I think is very important when it comes to capsule art.
Yeah, that's good advice, I think. And maybe it sounds like for someone looking for an action is like if you're trying to workshop a capsule, ask what question it evokes, or does it evoke a question or some type of curiosity or something like that. Sounds like that would be very helpful. Do
Movement
you
helps too.
remember? Go ahead.
The movement helps too. I think like having there be emotion that's about to happen or is happening is also important because then the question could automatically just be like, what's about to happen? And then you have to click on because I remember with Megabonk, I clicked on that because I was like, who's being bonked? Like, why is he hitting someone with a hammer? Is this a guy?
Yep.
Like, what? So like I had to click on it to find out, right? So yes, good action. What question are you going to be asked? And then the movement might be a cheat code to find your action. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. I appreciate the extra input there. You remember how many wish lists you had when you launched?
Yeah, that was crazy. I had 4,000 right before, like 2 weeks before I launched. And I went into the Incremental dev channel and was like, hey guys, I only have 4,000 wish lists. Am I cooked? And they were all like, yeah, you're cooked. And one dev was like, delay. Don't even launch your game. You should delay it. And I was like, oh my God, no, Jesus. So I remember I had 4,000 and then Thornity was like, well, we launched a game that only had like 3,000. You should be okay. So long as like you're a 1 in a million hit or something like that. And I was like, oh God, like, so, I was in a bad spot. I was freaking out. I got those 4,000 wish lists from doing a lot of outreach, but I'd only done outreach to about 100 creators. and that was great. Like getting 4,000 wish lists is hard. I don't think a lot of people, maybe they do, but like 4,000 is like, oh, 4,000, like 4,000 views on a YouTube video is like not too bad to get. But getting 4,000 wish lists is it's tough. And that had taken me like 2 or 3 months to get. So I was like, I have to get like, they were telling me you need 5 to 6,000 before launch to get on the new and trending page.
Yep.
And once you hit new and trending, or it's popular upcoming, sorry, the popular upcoming page. And once you hit that, it'll essentially double your wish lists. So I was freaking out. One of the devs reached out to me and was like, hey, I've got this spreadsheet with 500 content creator names on it. Do you want it? And I was like, yes. I just immediately sent keys out to all these people, and I got my next 2 wish lists, next 2K wish lists, and then I hit popular upcoming, and I think on launch day I had 9,000 or 10,000 wish lists. So, yeah.
So you went from 4 to 6, and then getting on popular and upcoming gave you another 3-ish, somewhere in there. Interesting. Did you do Next Fest?
I did. Next Fest got me. I think I went from like I had 2,000 or maybe less than 2,000 before Next Fest from Orbital Potato. He played my game. He's a incremental strategy YouTuber, and the video at the time had like 70,000 views. So it was a pretty largely viewed video. And then I had one other smaller creator who made a video that got like 1,000 views. So between those two, they had gotten me like 1,800, which is actually quite a lot. And I think maybe one of my devlogs probably contributed maybe 300 or 400 to that 1,800 as well. And then maybe I did do like a Reddit post, and that was also when my itch demo was out. So like all that stuff together gave me about 800. And then going into Next Fest, I got about 1,400 wish lists from Next Fest. So, but I remember realizing like, damn it, I didn't do any demo outreach. Like going into Next Fest without doing demo outreach is so stupid. Like, I probably would have doubled my sales if I had done that. That is a big reason why Black Hole, obviously it looks awesome. It plays well. But I think a huge reason why they blew up as much as they did is because they did their demo outreach. So they had a huge content cycle before going into Next Fest and then during Next Fest. And that got them even more wish lists and more visibility, which then kept compounding and is still compounding. So I think I would have been able to get maybe up to 10,000, maybe 8,000, maybe even 6,000. And then I would have been able to, launch with 15,000 wish lists or 20,000 wish lists if I had been able to do a demo cycle. So that's a huge step that you should not miss.
Yeah, the way I'm currently thinking about success in the game dev space is it's like rolling a bunch of dice. Like there's not a guarantee that you'll be successful, but there's a lot of inputs that you can do, like reaching out to content creators, like doing Steam Next Fest. And every time you're doing those, you're adding dice to your pool of rolling for successes. And that evokes another question for me that I have found it fun to ask a couple of people. Do you think that success on Steam is luck or skill?
I'm leaning towards the skill camp, mostly just because this is my first launch on Steam, but like I had said on Scope Creepers, this is not my first game launch. So I've launched plenty of other games on Roblox, and then even though itch is not really it's not hard to launch a game on itch, I've launched a few games on itch, and so I've seen the numbers, and I've also just seen the competition, and I've seen the different things that can happen where like you can launch when somebody else has a popular game out and it can totally eat your lunch. And so there's a couple of things that can kind of hinder your tail or your sales. Like Thornity probably mentioned, I didn't have a chance to watch the podcast, but he mentioned that we launched during the Steam Winter Sale, and launching into the Winter Sale cut our time on popular upcoming, new and trending, because the sale started and then all of the sale games got onto that list. So I feel like that kind of stuff is luck, even though like if we had known about that, we would not have planned to do our launch around then, right? But then you could deem that as skill because now we have the knowledge later to not do that. So I feel like it's luck if you haven't done it and you don't know what you're doing, but the more you do it, the more it becomes skill, which is why you see uh older developers with more games under their belt, they end up doing better and better. I think there are cases where people do about the same or worse. But I think that happens because they're reading the tea leaves incorrectly. They're taking the wrong lessons from their successes, or maybe they just don't care to learn. Um, I'm pretty into bizdev, and like I just feel like they're like you said that you can learn about each dice and the shape of each dice and but at the end of the day, it's a die, so like you could technically roll all ones and
Mm-hmm.
have a critical failure, but I it's so rare, and I feel like each piece of knowledge is like adding a new die to the bag. So like yes, I think you could totally do everything right and have a critical failure, but I think it's like so astronomically low that will happen. Um, and I think like you would just have to have the universe would be out to get you if
Yeah.
that did happen, and even then, I think you could bounce back. So I think like the only reason that would happen is like maybe you put AI art in your game and everybody cancels you. Maybe one of the people that you're working with is like secretly a horrible person and they get canceled. Maybe you launch during like one of the most popular indie game launches ever. Like you launch the same week Balatro launches on accident and Balatro just eat your lunch, right? Like, but you could bounce back from that, I think. Like, I don't think that would totally make you fail. I think the next week or the week after that, you would get sales and you could do outreach and be like, hey, we launched during Balatro launch. Like, can you cover a game now? Like, I don't think there's always something you can do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love the nuance you brought to that question. That was super cool. This next question I'm really curious about because I think you've answered maybe on kind of different sides of this, but on the spectrum of biz dev to artist, or maybe there's a better way to phrase that, but where would you say you line in that between biz dev and artist is what I could think of.
Biz dev and artist. I know I've been thinking about this lately too. Before launching a game, I probably would have said like 100% artist, 100% developer. Even the way I talked to you about how I balance my game is like, I feel like that's way more artist.
Yeah.
And biz dev would probably lean the other side where it's like, no, we want to maximize the profit no matter what the cost, I don't want to be EA. I don't want to be Ubisoft. I don't want to be Activision. But I do want to be able to pay my bills, and I do want to, having enough money to do the things I want to do is important to me. I don't want to be a big tech bro, but I would like to have enough money where I don't have to work sometimes. Like I'm working 3 jobs right now and doing indie dev. It sucks. Oh, I'm dreaming of. I've got dollar signs in my eyes. I also got a master's degree, and that only raised my pay by like I don't know, like 10%. I only made like an extra like $4,000 a year now because I got my master's degree, and it's like
That's tough.
I don't know. I feel like we're just in a very unless you're in tech, and even if you're in tech, like you're kind of feeling not safe because of AI. So
Yep.
like I don't really feel like anybody feels safe right now. So I'm leaning pretty heavy into biz dev these days because I'm just like I would like to have enough money to be able to like chill and just be able to make cool stuff. But I'm very artist because I just want to make something cool. Like I just want to make something that I would have loved to play when I was a kid. And so I don't think I'll ever compromise that vision. But I don't think I'm ever just going to launch a game, even if it's not finished. I'm definitely going to cut some stuff, even if it is going to help me pay some more bills. I might just scrap a project because it's not good enough. So both, but I also just like biz dev. Like this podcast coming on here is a little bit biz dev for me, in my
Mhm.
opinion. More exposure on the internet is good exposure. I did also want to meet you. I thought you were a wonderful host. I wanted to talk
Oh,
to
thank
you.
you.
So this is excellent, but I love this. I love talking to people about this. I love strategizing. It's game dev is um it's its own game. I'm having fun doing this and figuring out all the strategy and the tricks. Like it feels like telling people or giving people a walkthrough. It's like, all right, at this level, make sure you watch out for the water trap because there's an alligator there. Like that feels like, before you go into next best, make sure you do a demo outreach. Like it's transitive for me. So like I'm just having a blast doing biz dev. I think it's super fun. I now that I know the rules, I'm having a blast doing it. So
Yeah, well, and you are a good example of someone who blurs the lines between those two things. And I think ultimately it's actually like a false choice or like a false dichotomy. I don't know if I'm using that word right, but
yeah,
like in some interviews I've had with people that are more biz dev driven, there'll always be comments like, "Well, you're not a real game dev if you're not, just following your heart." And it's all game dev. Like, I mean, yes, there's like this art piece or this hobby piece, but I think you're a really good example of how to hold both of those things well. You've mentioned in other interviews that like you're going to make a game that you're excited about. And like that's kind of where you're drawing your line. And that is a little bit more artist like. Like you're not just going to say what's the most effective game I can release, but then when you do have a game you like, you're going to figure out the way to make the most money with it. You're going to make decisions that are going to ultimately benefit you. And so I just think you have a really good blend with that and a really healthy blend that people could look to if they want to do a little bit of both of that, or they feel like they want to play in that arena.
I agree. I just wanted to comment a little bit further just because I saw, I think it was a comment on your last video that you just released, or your last interview. There was somebody in the comments that was like, I don't want to watch like game dev slop or what, I don't know the term that it like bro dev slop or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that, especially with the use of like AI to help code and stuff like that. Like there's a weird like subculture of, I don't know if it is actual developers that are saying this or if it's people watching development and they just have like a false understanding of like how you actually do this stuff. But there's people who are like watching this that are just like, no, like don't be a sellout, like you corporate shill. And it's like, I don't know. Like I had my video that did pretty well a couple weeks ago, the one that you mentioned at the top of the podcast. I had a company reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, we want to give you a free desk. Like, will you do a sponsorship?" And I was like, "Yeah,
That's cool.
of course." Of
Yeah.
course I want a free desk. Are you kidding me? But I think there's people out there who are like, no, don't take the free desk. You're a corporate sellout.
You're
And
a
it's like,
sellout. Yeah.
right. Like I think there, like you said, there is a line. Like I don't think you have to just fully sell out. Like I've seen people who they start to do well on YouTube and then they start selling out and every video is like there's an ad and they're doing reviews now and they're changing their whole content structure to get free stuff and it's like that sucks. Or people who start making good games and then like I think this is happening with CD Projekt Red, the developer of The Witcher and Cyberpunk, where like they started out being like we're just going to make cool stuff and then now with Cyberpunk it was slimy. They're like we're going to make a first person game so it's mass appeal, and then the people in charge are just like leaning into trends instead of following what the studio wants to do. And I don't think that's good. I don't think, and I've worked with developers in the past who, and this I was following this too, where we would originally come at it, where it's like, what can we pick? This goes to your question too, like incremental dev, like what genre can we pick or what idea can we pick that the most people are going to want to play? And we did that a lot with Roblox. And I think on Roblox, the reason we were doing it there is because we weren't 5 to 10-year-old kids. We were 20-year-olds. So we were like, I don't know what a 5 to 10-year-old wants to play. So the only thing I have to go on here is like, what are the 5 to 10-year-olds playing? Let's copy it and try to do it.
Yeah.
But I think there are some game developers who like, they don't play a ton of games. Or maybe they're going to try to make a genre that they don't understand yet. And so, they do lean into more of like, let's just go trendy. Let's do what is popular because that's all you have to go off of, right? So I don't know. It's a tough area to be in.
Yeah, I'm in such an interesting, not even weird, such an interesting place of reflection. Like with that last video you mentioned, it was on my interview with Mrs. Iz's, who's like a really long time successful YouTuber game dev. And so I think part of the reason people are upset was I framed it around like passive income. The conversation wasn't actually really about passive income. There was like maybe 10 minutes near the end that I asked him about. but I usually frame my conversations around those because far and away, I interview a lot of developers, not just ones that are making games full time, but I think there might have been one that just said he just wanted people to love his games. But at the end of every episode, I ask people what their dev dream is. That's kind of the theme of the podcast. And almost everyone says, I just want to make enough money to make games. And so it's like, there's this weird juxtaposition where the people writing the comments probably wish that they could make enough money to make games. Hard to know exactly who they are. Maybe they're not developers. And so I want to help people know that they can do that and inspire them to do that. But by focusing on that, there's a small group of people that feel like that's the wrong way to do it and that now you're a sellout. So it's just a really interesting thought process. And luckily I'm in a super healthy place. I don't take it as like super harsh criticism. I'm usually a little bit sassy and sarcastic back.
Right.
But usually I just, think that if someone's taking the time to be that grumpy on a YouTube video, they're probably not doing well. And there's been times in my life I was not doing well. So I should probably actually be nicer to them now that we're talking about it. But
it is what it is. Be nice to people on the internet. Take out your frustrations to people who are just out here trying to do things, like if you really want to be mad, go make a video where you're being mad and post it, like don't say it in the comments, man. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Or go do it your way. Like, you don't have to listen to my podcast. I don't care.
Right.
Like,
that too.
Do what you want.
I think too, based on what you're saying, I don't know if you watch any, I don't know how much YouTube that you do watch. But
I'm on YouTube all day.
Okay. All right. So, there's, I think, oh God, what's his name? Ali Abdal. You know Ali?
Yep.
Abdal. Okay. So like all of his videos, he's kind of the video where it's like passive income or like the Diary of a CEO podcast. Like those two guys have like spread that idea on the internet of like passive income, like we can do this, like financial gain, what's the best way to do it? And I've just in my trying to be successful on YouTube, I'm like looking at trends and like how to structure the same topic for different audiences. And I very consciously, I was watching Aramis when he was posting like how much money he made from his video. And I've seen other devs do that. And I see those videos, they do okay, but they don't do as well as like somebody who makes a web application and goes, I just made $500,000 from my web application. Because most of the web tech bros are like, oh, cool. How do you do that? But a lot of the game developers are like, they're not as they are motivated by money. Like you said, it's a weird thing because they're like, I want money, but like, I'm not doing this for money. I'm an artist, right? But the people making web apps, they're doing it for money. So that they're more motivated by the money. So that's why I took the student loan thing. Because a lot of my original, I had 10 different titles before that was a heavily, people are like, this is so authentic and unedited. I was like, you have no idea. No, it is not.
That's incredible.
So many things behind the scenes, like just tweaking and manipulating and trying to do it. But the student loan idea settled on because I was like, that's what this crowd needs is like, they want to make money, but as an underdog. Like they don't want to be, they do, but they don't want to admit it, So it's so hard and weird. Like that's probably what happened. That was my read on that thumbnail. I was like, oh, that's you're aiming at the tech bros and not the game developers. Like, it's such a weird, like the YouTube culture is, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, you've given me a lot to think about, even with how I go about titling and thumbnailing my podcast, because, yeah, like you said, almost maybe finding a way to say you made money that says something else. That is really interesting. I'm going to have to play around with that. That's clever, because you're right. There's a weird culture there. Anyway, yeah, that was a fun little tangent I didn't know we were going to go on. I do want to take a minute to ask you a little bit about some game design principles, because I know you like talking about it as an educator on YouTube and such.
Yes.
My first question is, you say the fastest way to learn Godot is to learn Pico 8. Why is that? I haven't used either of those, so I don't know what that means.
So yes, I still stand by that. I think Pico 8 is, do you know what Pico 8 is?
I have seen videos on it, so I know what it is, yeah.
So Pico 8, and then you know what Godot is, obviously. I think I made that video also kind of following trends, but also because it was my own experience. I learned Pico 8 and then I learned Godot, and I was like, dang, I'm sure glad I learned Pico 8 because it made learning Godot easier. And then I made a video about it. And the reason why is because Pico 8 is everything's built in. So your sprite editor is built in, your sound generator and DAW is built straight into Pico 8. All the code is built into Pico 8. Your file management system is built into Pico 8, and then you can like launch and run and like sell your game all within Pico 8. Like you could just post it straight from Pico 8. That might not be true, but I'm pretty sure you can export it and upload it into like the Pico 8 exploratory thing. So it just being a very self-contained little thing that costs like $10 or is free if you use the education version is like is perfect. If you just want to dabble, if you just want to like try to make something, and then it's also it's so old, you have to like code your own physics, you have to code all your own functions. There's not a ton of inbuilt functions. You have to code your own rendering. So it teaches you a lot of like the core principles that you don't really have to learn with bigger engines that like build a lot of the components for you. And then it limits you to make something very, very, very small, which is a common piece of advice that devs give, where it's like start small, make something small. So I don't know if I would ever suggest people use Pico 8 to go make a full game, but I would suggest like go use Pico 8 to like just learn about game dev and like clone a game, or like just try to make a little toy in Pico 8. Like I made a toy where like you buy little crushers and they're in a little grid, and like you just buy new ones, and like it's a little incremental game where you can just keep buying more and more and more, and they just make you more money. Um, just to teach myself the engine. So I learned the basics and then did that. And then after doing that, I like understood the basics, and I could take that over to Godot, where like in Godot I have to learn a sprite and bring that in. I have to go learn a DAW and do my sound design and bring that in. I have to go learn Blender and bring that in. Like you have to learn so many other things when you start using bigger engines, Unity, Unreal, that Pico 8 just teaches you off the bat. So that is why I made that video. That's why I suggest you go dabble with it if you're just trying to hone your dev skills. It's like a whetstone. Like I like to go back to it and just make just little toys just to see if I can.
You think it specifically transitions into Godot well, or it just would be good to do before any engine?
Any engine. I said Godot because at the time Godot is trending pretty hard. So that was like a YouTube decision, and also just my own experience.
Cool. How do you make a game fun?
I can't remember who said this, but it was a developer at some point. Great games are played, not made. I think that might have been Todd Howard, which is funny that he's the Skyrim guy. So,
that is ironic.
but really, like, I think that's what it is.
Just
So,
playing the game.
yeah, go play games.
That is sound advice. I'm curious if you have any experiences playing incremental games that you didn't think were fun. Like we've spent a lot of time today talking about incremental games and the different variations of min-maxing versus vibe checking, but is there anything more tangible, and maybe it is just the timing of things, but anything more to dive a little bit deeper into what actually makes an incremental game fun, or maybe if we need to approach it a different way, what makes one unfun?
What makes an incremental game unfun? I don't know. I think most of them are fun. I think, just inherently, like, humans love buying something and then like just getting better and better and better at something. So I don't think there's a way to make it unfun necessarily. I think as long as you are, like I talked about with Universal Paperclips, like it's just text and numbers going up. Like they're all going to be fun. But I think you can make something mediocre, and I think that's definitely possible. So like if you just copied Universal Paperclips and release that out again, people would go, "Oh, this isn't that good," because it's been done before. So I think Maybe if you made an incremental game where I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the same thing with every genre. Like if you make a platformer that's just a generic platformer, like I think the only way to make an unfun game is if the game doesn't work. Um, you know, and you can clearly see with games that are unfun or poorly reviewed, they're poorly reviewed because like something is broken or there's a core mechanic of the game that like works just way differently than like what players are expecting. And these types of games where they're terrible are usually just made by people who think that it's a gold rush and they just jump in and they do an asset flip or whatever. So, in my opinion, it's very hard to make a terrible game, but it's very easy to make a mediocre game. So, I think that's the tough part is that it's super. The floor is very low. Like you can make a 70% Steam game. That's probably most people's base, but the trick is like how do you get up into the 85-90% range, right? And I think there you just got to be creative at that point. Like there's no answer to that. I think the biz devs would say it's data driven. Just find, and that's why they like incremental games because it's like, yeah, just get a skill tree with at least 50 skills and make sure you get a skill every 2.3 seconds and increase that exponentially with this logarithm. And like, yeah, you can totally do that. I think Fortnite's figured out how to do that. Call of Duty's figured out how to do that. Like, there was a video I saw the other day in Call of Duty where people were like, yeah, if you stand at this window and you wait 8 seconds and then you look away and you look back, a guy will pop up and you can shoot him every time because the maps are made in such a way where every like 8 to 10 seconds, somebody will pop up in one of the, and that's just to increase your engagement and your dopamine.
Right.
And that's why people play those games. So it's like, so I guess there is a way where you can get to that level, but even like Call of Duty is rated like an 8 out of 10 every year, like those aren't perfect games. So I think if you want to achieve that high tier next level of like super duper amazing fun, you got to make something new that people haven't seen before. If you just want an 8 out of 10, grab the formulas that's been solved. Video games are solved. Just reskin it, make it look a little different. Grab a formula, put something out. You'll make some money. I think that's weird. I wouldn't suggest that you do that, but that is possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe what you're talking about is stealing like an artist is the way to go. Like take different things that we're all inspired by other things, but don't copy paste, but take a little here, throw your own spice or your own idea in there, and then now you've got something interesting. So I think that made a lot of sense. Now, you say in your YouTube description that you're documenting your journey from hobbyist to full-time developer. Are you happy with the progress you've made towards that goal?
Yeah, I'm a lot further along than I thought I'd be at this point. I was pretty sure that Execute was going to be not a failure, but I was expecting to make maybe 10 grand. Like I knew it was going to succeed and 10 grand was going to be a success. For me, and that would have been like 7,000, 8,000 copies. So yeah, nope, that would have been like 4,000 copies sold, maybe, because I launched with a discount. So yeah, I was expected to sell around that, and I was going to be like, okay, that's okay, and then we'll do another one. But at this point, I feel like I'm very close. I feel like I'm like knocking on the door of full-time dev, and it feels like I just barely didn't make it. So I feel like that's how I feel after Execute. So I'm a little disappointed because I'm like, fudge, if I had just did a little bit better, I could have quit my job. So yeah, I'm pretty hungry for the next one because I'm working on 2 projects right now and they are both very cool and very different than what most people have seen, I think. They are not incremental games, but they are inspired by incremental games, and they're actually inspired by quite a few different genres, and I'm not sure how to market them because they are kind of new. So I'm excited to announce these, and I'm really hoping that they come out and people are like, wow, this guy did the thing. He's the next big deal. Oh my God, how did you come up with this idea? And I'll be like, I just stole like 10 ideas from 10 different games.
Yeah. That's very exciting. How long ago did you set the goal to become a full-time dev?
Oh man, I think that goal was set after Execute launched. I just recently updated that statement because I didn't think I was going to ever be able to be a full-time developer. But then after seeing those numbers, I was like, okay, I think I could be a full-time developer.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So before that, it was just a pipe dream. I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll try making a game. And I love video games. I've played them a lot. I've got opinions. I could probably do it. And now I'm doing it. So
In your long-term plan now, do you also consider YouTube a part of that, or would the long-term plan to be just make games and cut the YouTube, or would the long-term plan to be a YouTuber like who also just happens to make games? Where's your hope with that?
my vision is to do exactly what that description says, document the whole journey. And I have a vision where my YouTube channel in the future is similar to like a Linus tech tips kind of thing. I know he's giving out tech tips, but like I would love to have it be like, hey, or even like a Marcus Brownlee where it's like, hey, like I was just a guy in my bedroom and now look, I have this huge company and like we make videos constantly and like I'm not the guy. I still always want to be the face or the guy talking, but like I want to document the entire process. I want to like walk people up from like, here's where it started, here's where we are, here's what the studio looks like, and just give people a view of everything and just make it all public and just be like the authority on YouTube for game developer marketing, game developer tactics, and just kind of build a business around that as like a backbone just in case we do have a flop. But like, yeah, YouTube is business and marketing and networking, and then video games are bonus money if we end up being creative enough. So,
Yeah, that's a super cool vision. This interview has been an absolute pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I would like to end you with one final question here, and maybe some of what you were talking about falls into this, so maybe you've already talked about it, but this is the Dev Dream Podcast, and it was made to inspire people to follow their dreams of making games. But I'm curious for you, what would you say your game dev dream is in this season of life?
oh man, I would really like to launch another successful game this year. Got a baby on the way that's going to be coming in June. I don't know if the game's going to be finished by June, but it would be super cool to launch a game before the baby comes and kind of have that push me over the hump and just be able to let me move a little closer to that vision that I just outlined, because that would be cool if every day I don't even need to be making enough money from games. I would just like to be able to make enough money. Not, I love teaching, but I would like to teach what I want to teach. I still want to teach people. I want to teach game dev full time, and I want to make video games. Still as like, I don't know, it's a 50-50 thing, but I would just like to wake up and do what I feel like doing. And so right now I'm hoping that next game gets me closer to that.
Well, Payne, that is a fantastic vision. I hope that you're able to make that a reality. Also, congratulations on the baby, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Blake. Super cool to be on here and to get the chance to speak all of this. You've helped me as well. It's always nice to get all the thoughts out. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this entire episode with Payne. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to let me know, you can leave me whatever emoji you think best represents his game, Execute, which again is about a guillotine on a cursed computer, maybe getting rid of all the people in the world. Also, if you're enjoying this and you're looking for another conversation with a great developer, I think you'll enjoy this one on the screen. See you, my friend.